All right, what's up, everyone? Logan Shinholser here. Welcome to another webinar. Today is all about building your remodeling company's 2026 marketing playbook. So basically the gist of what we're going to go through today is really going to be all about actually having a set structure and strategy to what we're doing from a marketing standpoint. A lot of stuff has been shifting over the past few years when it comes to what works in the marketing world. A lot of this spray and pray stuff it's been going away for a while, but it's really starting to accelerate more and more now that there's a little bit of fear in the economy and nobody really knows what's happening. So the need to really be a little bit more dialed in is just going to continue to become that much more important. So that's what we're talking through today. We're going to have at the end of it Q&A. So during all of this, if you have questions, please go ahead, pop your question in there. If it makes sense for me to answer it at that time, I'll do it. If not, I'll acknowledge, hey, I see the question, and then we'll move on and I'll answer it at the right time. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. So if this is your first webinar, just because there's a lot of keyboard warriors out there, Logan Shinholser, I own Contractor Growth Network. I've spoken on stages at, IBS, Contractor Fight, Remodelers Advantage, Job Tread, Remodelers on the Rise. Basically, if there's like a stage that focuses on remodeling, industry at some capacity, I've most likely spoken on it or on their podcast or something like that. It's funny, I had a conversation with somebody the other day just about what is the barrier to entry as a marketing agency? And it's really, you just got to have a laptop and I guess watch YouTube and have some confidence and you can get your foot in the door. And unfortunately, it doesn't usually turn out very well. So just to kind of show a little bit of proof of we know what we're talking about here. We don't know everything. It is marketing. There's stuff that it does need to get tested throughout it. However, you really want to back a horse that does this day in and day out for years and years and years, versus something that's just kind of a weekend warrior trying to do this marketing stuff. What we're talking about today is really three big things that we're going to focus on. So the first one is, understanding how an ideal client avatar and a unique selling proposition is developed. If you look at a lot of like the reviews that we get here at CGN, a lot of it focuses on the fact that we go deeper into somebody's marketing, or like we help them understand more about who they're actually trying to target with their marketing. That's what we're going to be talking about today. This is like the most important part of all this marketing stuff that nobody really takes the time to go through. We take an exorbitant amount of time here at CGN to go through it, and today is going to be basically a presentation version of what a back and forth interaction would be if you were to work with us. The next part is, once we talk about how to develop that, is how do you actually infuse it into your marketing? Now that we know who we're going after and what makes us special and different and unique, we want to make sure that all of our marketing is like dialed in, saying that exact thing. And then lastly is, how do we actually audit the existing marketing efforts that you're doing to figure out, are you dialed in or not? That's basically the gist of this stuff. You may look at this and go, wow, this is really high level. You may look at this and go, that's super basic. But ultimately, this is the stuff that I've never spoken to a remodeling company that has this stuff 100% super dialed in. There's different nuances that we want to go through and I'll talk through today. That the way that I like to explain it is, when it comes to sales, there's like a very specific way that when you want to talk about budgets with somebody, you may not necessarily want to go, hey, what's your budget? You want to go, hey, a project like this could be anywhere from, you blow it out of the water, it's 400 grand. You kind of dial it back and do some more builder grade options. You're looking at 250. Where do you fall in that range? That's a very different way of getting somebody's budget rather than just saying, what's your budget? So that's what we're going to talk about today. Is we're going to pull this stuff out of our ideal client, but really understand what it is, what the nuances are, so that way you know how all this stuff works. All right. This slide is going to be, you're going to see this a bunch today. And this is what we're going to be going through. It's called inside out marketing, but basically what most marketing agencies and what most marketing strategies are all about is really, we're just going to throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and see what sticks, and hopefully we hit the target at some point. We want to start with the bullseye, which is the middle part, and this is all about what problem is your ideal client actually facing. Then, once we know exactly who they are and what problems they're having, we're going to go through how do we actually help them solve it. Then we're going to go through, great, now that we can figure out, problem solution, can we actually get our ideal client to say, oh, I think this company is a good fit for me? Then once we've identified that, can they actually find you when they're looking? And then lastly is, even before they're looking, do they even know that you exist? Because if you have a brand built up, it makes it a lot easier when they do search for you to go, oh, I remember this person. All right, so you'll see this a lot. We're going to walk through each one of these today, but this is going to be the most important slide of the entire day, and I got 61 of them. Here's what a normal strategy looks like in the remodeling world. So, you start to say, look, I got to do this marketing stuff. Referrals alone aren't cutting it, or I'm ready to like take it to the next level because I know this is going to maybe run out at some point, or I don't want to rely on my past customers only doing the heavy lift for me. I want to make sure I'm covering all my bases. So what it typically looks like is somebody starts off and they're going to build out just a mediocre website. They don't even know what to build, but they check the box to go, I know I need a website. Let me just go ahead and build one out. Then they go, okay, great. I got a website built out, but how do I actually get people to find it? Well, Google, I'm sure Google ads works. So let me go ahead and set up some Google ads. Then from there, it's, I got approached by somebody at a golf course that said, hey, I could sponsor their golf course card. And I think the rich people play golf, so why would I not sponsor that? And hopefully somebody playing golf sees that I sponsored it and they give me a call. And then that doesn't really work out that well. And then you start to dabble in some SEO, but you're already spending some money with Google Ads and a golf course card. So your budget's starting to get kind of tight. So you do a little bit of SEO, but it's really more of a kind of SEO because it's one of those things that you say, well, I don't really know if it's going to work or not. So instead of me pouring a bunch of money into it, I might as well just spend a little bit of money, dip my toe in, and then if it works, cut everything else out and then go into this full, fledge. But ultimately, it's just not enough to really move the needle. So then we decide, well, we already have some past customers with referrals, so like maybe I should just go ahead and start firing us some email marketing. Don't really know what that looks like, but I've heard that I should have a newsletter, so let me go ahead and do that. And then, hey, I just posted on Facebook and it's doing pretty well, I think, so let me go ahead and boost it. And basically what ends up happening is we have all these puzzle pieces and nothing fits together because there is no rhyme or reason here. We have a bunch of different tactics that none of these are necessarily bad, but they go in the wrong order, right? All of these have a place in the marketing approach, but just like if you're going to build a house, like you got to start with the foundation. That's what this is all about today, is getting that foundation dialed in. So first leaning into our ideal client. Who are we going after? What's important to them? Our unique selling proposition. What do we do that's special and different and valuable? Then it's media and branding. Are we actually showing people what they want to see that gets them excited to potentially hire us? Then a website that ties it all together. Then we're going to go through SEO and AI search, which we did a whole webinar on how all that stuff works. So if you want to see how that works, we have a previous webinar that's right up your alley. And then lastly, that's where we're going to get into the, how do people hear about us before they're actively searching for us? That's where we're going to talk through not only like video and like meta ads, but also golf course cards and billboards and all that sort of stuff. So we're going to go in this exact order today. We're going to break every single thing down. And without further ado, my goal for you today is to walk away with this phrase, and it is, I understand exactly how to make my ideal client say, I could definitely see you doing this project for us. That is the goal. One more time, I understand exactly how to make my ideal client say, oh, I could definitely see you doing this project for us. And if you notice, I threw an O in there because it's surprising to them too. So that's the goal. When we think about why prospects hire you, there's a bunch of reasons. And when we think about the number one reason why prospects hire you, you may be thinking, well, the number one reason why somebody hires me is because I communicate better than all the other remodelers. And while that is a reason, that is not the number one reason that prospects hire you. Or you may be thinking, well, the craftsmanship itself is so good, our work speaks for itself. Fortunately, that's not the number one reason they hire you. Always on time, always on budget, that's great, but not the number one reason. Decades of experience and expertise, again, not the number one reason, but super good. Or we're a family-owned, customer-focused company, again, great reason, but not number one. The number one thing here of why people hire you is because they have a problem and they want you to solve it. That's what it comes down to. we want to keep this at the forefront of how we approach our marketing, is understanding that while all the other things that we have a place and they're great and they're super beneficial, it doesn't matter how nice you are, how family friendly you are, how customer service focused you are. People are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to invite strangers into their home for months on end. To part ways with that amount of stuff and have you invade their privacy that much is more like, it's gonna take so much emotion from the actual homeowner that it's not just simply like, well, we answer the phone. They need an actual reason. That is what we want today to be all about, is really leaning into that specific reason. We'll talk about how to use the other things, but do not forget the number one reason that people hire you, and it's ultimately they have a problem and they want that bad boy fixed. So back to that idea of, I could definitely see you doing this project for us. There's a couple of aspects of this phrase. The first one is this project. All right. We want to talk through what are the projects that we're doing? Who do we specialize in, which comes down to the us phrase. But ultimately what most remodeling companies and companies in general do is they focus on the you, which in this case is we. How are we the best remodeling company, and what do we do better than everybody else? And again, those are great, but ultimately the customer cares about themselves and their own project. We'll get to how you then factor into it, but ultimately their project and their family and who they are, that is the most important piece to them. We need to first focus on that. We're gonna play a little side game here, and it's basically, pretend that you are, you have an issue with your heart and you got to get surgery. All right, you're either going to go to a generalist surgeon or a heart surgeon. Generalist does a wide range of surgeries. They do a few heart surgeries per year. They're trained in general surgery, residency, so they know how surgery works. And then they read up on the latest techniques as needed. All right, they're about to go into surgery. Perfect. Let me read up on this stuff to figure it out. Flip side, you've got a heart surgeon, somebody who specializes in this, where they're performing only heart and major cardiac surgeries. They've done thousands of them. They are trained in this exact thing, and they actually publish and present on more advanced techniques. When you think about it, if you have a heart issue and you have the option, do I go generalist or a specialist? I think we can all agree we're going specialist all day long. And in this case, the downside of it is your health, right? You come out on the other side, it doesn't take, you don't make it, whatever that is. But we look at this on the health side, where we go, well, of course, for your health, you would spend whatever it takes to get the specialist in there, because that's worth it. But unfortunately, in the home, we don't see it that way. Well, these people are giving up, again, their privacy, their money, the things that they've worked for in their home. So the more that you become this specialist in their eyes, and that you're tailored specifically to their specific problem, the more that they're going to want to raise their hand and pick you. That's what we want. What happens, unfortunately, is when you approach somebody from a marketing standpoint, you are showing them, you being the general remodeling industry, hey, look, we do projects for first-time homeowners, growing families, empty nesters, retirees, whatever it is, we do really nice stuff. You're going to love us. And unfortunately, this doesn't speak directly to the person as a whole. When you're trying to market to everybody, you market to no one. So the way that we like to break this down is you have your x-axis, which is life stage, and you get your y-axis, which is project investment level, whether that's scope of the project or price point or whatever that is. That's kind of the grid that we're looking at. So what we want to focus on first is, let's look at the life stage, right? You've got people that are in their first time home, right? They're probably not going to go move, as a first-time homeowner, they're not moving in and putting on a $700,000 home addition or remodeling their whole space. It typically doesn't happen. On the flip side, you've got retirees. A lot of times they're focusing more on aging in place, so it's less extensive projects happening. Or maybe you have the empty nesters. They're in a high-end home. They got all this money because their kids are out of the house or out of college. Let's go ahead and make this house a big party home. And basically, when you show off all these different projects, you feel good because you can basically say, look, I've got a wide range of abilities here. You tell me what you want and I can make it happen. But kind of back to that heart surgeon analogy, the more that you broadcast a super wide range, the harder it is to speak to one individual person. Excuse me. Now, the large companies can do this. Companies that are doing, 50, 60, 70 million bucks a year in remodeling, it's a little bit different because like they've really got it dialed in where they're able to specialize and they have like on like almost like departments within, each like specialty, if you will. But if you're, somewhere like under the $10 million range, you probably don't have a bunch of departments that specialize in individual things. So it's a little bit harder. So now you look more like that generalist versus like the overarching hospital that actually has a specific heart surgeon. So in this case, what we want to think about is the life stage of the people that we work with compared to the project investment level of the types of projects that we do. And we want to be able to basically identify who do we want to go after, right? Who is going to be a good client for us where they are an ideal client with a project that we want to do on a consistent basis. And you may be thinking, well, I like to do the variety, and that's fine. But the more dialed in that you become, the more of a specialist that you're going to be seen as. It's going to be kind of this back and forth of, is there enough market desire for your super specialized thing? Ultimately, you kind of know the answer to that, but basically, the more that you can figure out this is who I serve and this is the type of project that I specialize in, the more that can be your jam, the easier it's going to be for somebody to raise their hand and say, I want you to do this for me. Now, funny enough, this slide actually took me the longest to create. But when we think about what we want to go after, and if we had to pick, all right, this is our ideal client and this is the type of project that we want to do, it's kind of this chicken or the egg approach where maybe you have a client that you absolutely loved working with. They were a younger couple, growing family. They were super cool, super understanding. They really let you do your thing. They were cool with the money, but the project that they had you do was a powder room, right? It was a $15,000, $20,000 bathroom, and that was it. And you know that at the end of the day, that's not really your specialty. You like to do larger, more complex projects, but your favorite client was the one that said, well, we do a powder room. That's what we're going to do. So you have to, when it comes down to picking who your ideal client is, you have to really decide either one, perfect scenario is you have an ideal client that you love to work with and they had a project that you absolutely would love to just like do all the time, like type of project. That's ideal scenario. So that could be growing family, could be who you really align with the most, and you did a whole home remodel, which is a type of project that you would love to just specialize in. That's perfect. But if you don't have that, what you then need to be able to do is either pick, okay, let me go after my ideal client, which could be that young growing family, and figure out those types of people. What projects are they doing, right? If they have a growing family, they're probably spending money on all their kids' stuff. They don't have this crazy high income, so they're probably doing less intricate projects and smaller projects. And if that's what you want to do, that's fine, but you got to make sure that you recognize that younger family is probably going to do smaller, easier projects. On the flip side, excuse me, you may just say, honestly, like they were awesome, but I don't want to do powder rooms. I want to do whole homes. That's perfect too. Pick the whole home side and say from there, okay, out of all the clients that we've done a whole home remodel for, who has been our favorite? And if you look at that ideal client and you go, okay, they weren't a younger growing family, but they were in their mid 50s and their kids had just gone to college and they're empty nesters, then look at them and go, okay, is that who you align with as far as the types of people that you want to work with? So you kind of have to pick a lane of, if you don't have the perfect service with the perfect client already dialed in, then you need to pick either let's go after the client and then tailor your services to them, or let's go after the type of project that I want to do and then figure out of your existing customers, who do you want to find more of that aligns with your ideal client that makes the most sense for you. So that's the approach that we want to take. If you want to be the specialist, you can do that. It's much harder to charge specialist money if you are just a generalist, and that's really just what it comes down to. So it's not like you have to stop everything today of, hey, if this is not the ideal client with the ideal service that we're going after, that's okay. But ultimately, you want to get it as dialed in as possible. And and the one caveat to all this is like from a marketing perspective, you don't have to, like, if somebody comes to you and you specialize in whole homes, great client comes up and says, hey, could you just do my basement? You can still do that, but just from a marketing perspective, a car dealership's not going to show off a Ferrari and a Saturn on the same lot. It's just two different types of buyers. So that's the same idea for you in the marketing standpoint. So let's figure out who our ideal client is and what problem are they actually facing. So what we want to know is let's just assume that we've picked out our ideal client. We know exactly who they are, and what we do not want is we don't want a general idea. Every single person that I talk to that comes to me and says, Logan, I already know who my ideal client is, they always give me generalities, right? There's been a couple that are like pretty dialed in, but for most part, everybody is very much like, I want people that are between the age of 35 and 65. They want a whole home remodel. They want to spend a bunch of money, and they like design. And that's accurate. However, that is such a wide net, because the reason that somebody who is at 35 years old compared to somebody who's at 65 years old is remodeling their whole home is most likely very different. They're in different stages of life with different needs. The 65-year-old could just be like, look, I want all high-end stuff. I'm retired. I got a huge check. I'm done. Let's ball out in this house. While the 35-year-old could be saying, I got 3 young kids at home. I need to make the most out of this individual space. And the way that you approach both of those projects is going to be pretty different. Different approaches, different communication styles, different design options, all of that stuff. So ultimately, the more that you can get your ideal client dialed in into a similar age bracket, what their pain points are, what their goals are, what stage of life that they're in, the easier that's going to be, because then you can kind of focus everything on that. But on top of that, like this right here, like this ideal client, remodeling their home into a bright, functional space for a growing family. I can tell you, like, my wife and I, we just had our second kid. We're doing an addition on our home right now because we don't have enough space. So like this, and as you can imagine, we also hang out with other people that have younger kids that also don't have much space in their home. So like from an overall, like, hey, can you help me in my home perspective? All of our friends, once this home edition is done, we'll be able to then look at our remodeling company and go, oh, they did this for you. They must be able to do this thing for me because I'm having the exact same issue as you. And that's where the importance of actually being able to have this stuff dialed in comes into play. So what we want to look at is, from a ideal client perspective, we want to understand the demographics. So basically, how old are they? What's their location? What type of home are they in? Those are like the main ones. Like the occupation is part of it, but like you could drill the stuff so deep that it's just like, it's kind of overkill of like, what's their favorite color? And unless you specialize in like lavender and they love lavender, that it doesn't really matter all that much. So don't kill yourself on it, but you basically want to have like an age range, a location, and a type of home or project that they're trying to update. That's going to be kind of your specialty. From a pain points perspective, what are the issues? Both from a what are they facing in their home, but also what are their concerns when it comes down to hiring a remodeling company, right? In their home, in this case, cramped kitchen, disconnected. When it comes to potentially hiring somebody, they're going to have frustrations with unclear budgets or unresponsiveness or overwhelmed by having too many options, or they're afraid about scope creep and messy timelines. So we're really picking out what their problems were. And then what do they really want? They want an open, bright, cohesive first floor, clear process, a design team that's actually going to listen, but also lead, right? They want to be able to, like I can tell you in my personal scenario, my wife has Pinterest boards. She doesn't want somebody to come in and basically say, I don't care about your boards. This is what we're doing. She wants somebody to like listen to her and take her ideas, but she doesn't want her ideas to be the only idea. She wants them to say, I see what you're going for. What if we do this, this, and this? So that's the approach that we want to take. And they also want to be able to have realistic budget guardrails and no surprises. All right, so when you're doing this for your ideal client that you've identified, what we don't want to do, or what you want to do eventually, is come up with trends, but initially we want to pick one individual person, and if you could only replicate that person, this is what we'd be filling out. It makes it so much easier to identify that person and then be able to like build a marketing around it if we actually have a specific person in mind. It's similar where if you have ever hired somebody in your company, when you ask like a general question that's like, hey, how do you feel about punctuality in the workplace? Of course, everybody's going to say, oh, it's great. I love it. But if you walk through and go, hey, walk me through a specific time that you showed up late for work. What was the situation and how did you handle it? Well, now they're forced to actually think through a very specific time, which shows you truly like how are they thinking, who they are as a person, stuff like that. That's why we want to go very specific with this, to find an actual person that fits this stuff that you can then get dialed in to say, look, this is who we're going after. This is what was, concerns with them, all that stuff. It makes it much easier if you actually have a specific person in mind. So the next piece is, great. Now that we have a very specific person in mind, now the next part is, how do we actually help them solve this problem? And the first piece that we want to think through is, what are all the specific deliverables that you provide? And when I say deliverable, I don't just mean like, oh, you do kitchens or we do bathrooms. Think of all the very specific, concrete things that you do in your business that you could write down that you do. One of those could be, hey, we do 3D design. One could be we do mood boards. It could also be we do daily logs in JobTread or in Buildertrend. It could also be we do weekly walkthroughs. We do whatever those are. You want to be able to write all of those things down as far as like very specific things that you do. You then want to figure out why you do those, right? You want to actually have an answer to why you're doing it that way. If there's things that clients specifically praise, those are probably going to be the most important ones. So for example, if nobody, when you look at your reviews, if you have a bunch of reviews and nobody says anything about the daily logs, but half of your clients talk about, hey, every single week we did a walkthrough of the project, the walkthrough the project is a more important one to them, clearly, than the daily logs. Doesn't mean that daily logs is not important, but you can start to kind of stack and figure out what are the most important pieces that we do to our clients. And the best places to look at them is, one, identify in the overall process, are there specific things that your client brought up? But then two, reviews are going to be the other thing, right? When somebody's writing a review, they don't write like paragraph on paragraph on paragraph. They write, a shorter, brief stuff. The most important things that stood out in their mind are the things that they talk about. So with that said, you want to figure out what those things actually are. On the flip side, excuse me, if the client is bringing up more generalities, like they communicated really well, that's great. What specifically did you do communication-wise that made them say that? A bad example is, oh, we answered all their questions. A good example is, we had daily logs. We did weekly walkthroughs. Whatever that is, read your reviews. That's what's most important to your clients. That's then going to be used as like in your marketing messaging overall. All right. And pro tip, list everything. Even if you think it's normal, just list it out. Then what you're going to do is problem, concrete, solution. So thinking back a couple of slides, what was the problem that our ideal client was facing? First, cramped kitchen, disconnected from daily life. Concrete solution is, hey, we do upfront 3D designs to actually show them how we can actually open up the space and connect it to the rest of the home. Their frustration was with unclear budgets and pricing. Well, what do? We specifically have fixed price contracts. So basically, this is what you're doing with your ideal client, where you now have all the specific pain points that your client has, whether it's with their home or with hiring somebody, and you're comparing that with, great, how do we actually solve that in a concrete way? What we don't want for that third one is unresponsive contractors and radio silence. What we don't want is, well, we answer our phones. Like, that's a very tough thing to measure. You could do it, but if you basically said, hey, homeowner says, I'm afraid that you're not going to respond or answer me, and you go, oh, I answer my phone all the time, watch this, boom, just did it once. Like, it's not enough, but if you say, don't worry, we do weekly recaps where we're going to walk through the job site. Plus, we actually have a chat function through our project management software where if you reach out to us, we have your entire team that's going to be on that project as well. That now makes it very specific and makes it harder for them to go, well, I don't believe that you're going to be responsive, because you actually have a concrete solution or what's called a mechanism to get there. So we want to have that problem solution chart that actually says these are the things that our ideal client was facing, and these are the specific ways that we actually solved that problem. And these become your unique selling propositions. All right. So now that you've identified these are the problems that we have, and now you have these are all the things that we do to fix it, these become the things that they may not necessarily, I know the word says unique, they may not necessarily be like unique to only you, but none of your competitors are really talking about this stuff. Like I do this all day long. I do a lot of marketing strategies, and a lot of that is competitor analysis. Very rarely do I actually find people that highlight their stuff in a concrete way online properly. Best case scenario, their clients will do it in reviews for them where they'll say, oh, they were great. They did weekly walkthroughs, but now you're putting the burden on the prospect to go through your reviews to figure out like, what are they actually doing specifically to solve this problem? Nobody puts it on their website. Nobody leans to do it in their online presence. So just the fact that you are able to highlight and articulate this stuff and put it front and center on your website now makes it so much easier for people to buy into the fact that you actually do these specific things. So these become your unique selling propositions. So the next part is, now that we know exactly who we're going after and what their problems are and how do you actually help them solve them, this is a huge one next, and that is, can they envision you helping them? All right, so now I'm the homeowner prospect. I've got these problems, growing family, and I want to get this thing solved. Who do I go after? The first thing in the remodeling industry that you need to focus on is good media. All right, you're in a very visual space. I don't care how many reviews you have. I don't care how great your design process is or any of that stuff. If I cannot look at what you do and feel like, wow, I want that in my home, it's going to be so much harder for you to get me as a homeowner to move forward. When my wife and I were like on our first bathroom addition remodel that we were doing a couple years ago, the way that she was searching, it was so cool to watch. Like, I've been doing this for forever, but like watching her actually try to find a remodeler online, watching her process was she's going to somebody's website and she's immediately going all through their photos. Are they good photos? Do they have photos of projects that are similar enough to what we wanted for her to feel like, oh, they could be the ones that do this? Even people, honestly, that had like professionally shot photos, but they weren't great professionally shot photos, which we're about to talk about in a second. She was like, why are these photos so dark? And I was like, well, it's just, I don't know, like they just hired somebody bad for it. And she was like, oh, okay, well, let's see if we can find somebody else instead. Like that was literally what was happening. So I'm a marketing guy. We do websites. We don't really do photography. So I don't make money off this, but this, like photography is like the number one thing that if you can only focus on one thing from here, it's going to be get good photos. All right. So today in this, because we only have, we're gonna blow past time, but this is like honestly 9 years of like marketing knowledge packed into one presentation. So I'm gonna keep rolling with it. There will be a recording of it. We're just gonna go through photography and design, renderings. Video is a whole different topic. However, video is becoming more and more popular, and doing it right is not easy to do, but it's super impactful when you can nail it. So let me show you something. This is one of our clients. This photograph was taken by a real estate photographer. All right, how do I know that? This was listed on the MLS. And this was not. This was taken by an interior design photographer. And they may look semi-similar, but the reality is there's a stark difference in a real estate photographer and an interior design or an architectural photographer. Biggest difference here, real estate photographer, their main goals are, one, they want to get wide angles. They want to show the full space. They want to maximize the space perception. They're trying to make the rooms look as big as possible. All right, that's what sells homes. Big rooms, big houses, big ceilings, big everything. That's what they're focused on. They want bright and open rooms, open spaces. They're going to have emptier rooms because it's going to look larger. They're really just trying to show off the space. They're going to throw all the lights on. They're going to make sure every window is open. Basically, the brighter that a room is, the larger it's going to look, and that's their goal. Flip side of that, you've got an interior design photographer, and what they're going for is more detailed shots that are going to show off more of the craftsmanship. So if you think about what an interior designer intrinsically does, they're more about setting up the right furniture, staging, all that sort of stuff. So their shots are not like a massive wide angle shot. They're going to get close-ups of the furniture, all of that stuff. They are more into the mood and the atmosphere and the lifestyle that the room now has compared to a real estate photographer that's all about open spaces. Interior designer is going to be able to show off, or interior design photographers going to be able to show off more of the texture and materials and the quality, and basically all the things that a referral that comes to you is already seen in one of your past customers' home. An interior design focused photographer is going to be able to capture that much better. And I'll show you some more examples, but basically what that means is if you think about you did a kitchen for somebody, their friends come over, they're not just standing in the corner of the room like, oh wow, like that's a really big space. They're actually walking up and they're touching the cabinets and they're looking at the countertops and they're seeing you use the space. That is what makes a referral so powerful, is because somebody's already been in the space. They can feel the energy. It's a very intimate environment because they're now in it. A good interior design photographer is going to be able to focus on that so much better. You can hire a real estate photographer and kind of coach them on this stuff. And we have documents that like we send out to say, hey, these are the things that you want to focus on. Here's some examples. Because basically real estate's all about get in, get out, get the pictures up. But a lot of this is really getting the staging correct and getting the lighting correct to really give off that mood and that feel to it. To give you an example, this is one of our clients. They're out in Seattle and they hired probably the most expensive photographer that I've come across. And they got a bunch of projects captured. And I want to show you that at like an outdoor living space for somebody, and I picked this one because objectively, it would have been easy to show you a kitchen or a bathroom and say, look how great this looks. I think an outdoor living space is going to be the hardest, quote unquote, to make it look like it's got a mood associated with it. This photographer staged it. Look at the lighting of it. And I'll show you some like a difference in what it would look like if a real estate photographer did it. But it's the angles. They get wide angles, but they also get close-up angles. They have it staged. They have fruit and pizza there. So basically, when you look at these photos, this is going to appeal to somebody who's going to want to sit in a cozy, intimate environment, have some pizza, have a glass of wine with some friends, sit by the fire, maybe throw the TV on. That is the mood that we're going for here. That's, like their whole, this client's like whole idea is that their clients, their homeowners want what's called coastal cozy, all right? This is coastal cozy to a T. So somebody who wants to spend more time outside, they're up in Seattle, perfect. This aligns perfectly with them. This is like a primo example of what a good interior design photographer will be able to help out with. Now, I took these images because they did all great images and I threw it into ChatGPT and basically said, make this look like how a real estate photographer would do it. And this is what it came up with. And if you can see, and I'll show you what it actually would look like if a real estate photographer did it, but it's a different angle. It's super bright. It's kind of whitewash. It just has a very different mood and vibe and feel to it compared to this. And realistically, if you hired a real estate photographer, what they would actually have done is probably come in, not staged it, and just shown that. Which, again, this still looks good. You can see what it is. You understand it. You're like, cool, we can hang out there. But this is a completely different vibe than this. That is the difference. And this is what, when you look at like the really high-end architectural firms, interior design firms, remodeling companies that put a lot of energy and emphasis into like the beauty and the aesthetic of their media, you may be saying, well, I got professionally shot photos. This paints a very different picture to a client than this, but it also shows a very different remodeling company that focuses on this. So I can't overstate the importance of good photos enough. The cool stuff is with all this AI stuff, again, I just took these photos, popped it in, said do this, said actually get rid of the staging, and it created this. So like the stuff's getting better and better, but like a good photographer is going to be worth its weight in gold. Lean into that stuff because you can always use those in your portfolios, on your website. That's going to be way more impactful than throwing a bunch of money at Google ads. All right, so that's going to be your media. Now, when it comes to design renderings, this is the other side of it. If you are very good at design, lean into that. This is actually my home. They're doing an addition on the backside of my house. This was the first design that we got. It's fine. It shows exactly what we want. I can understand it. Cool. This is what the designer did. They took it and they actually then put in the furniture that we're using. It's super realistic. It looks super cozy. When we started this project, what happened was it first went into, well, we just need more space because we were a growing family and we needed to put a desk outside because we no longer have a desk because we had to move one kid out of the nursery, put a new kid in the nursery, put the other one in the guest room, and we lost a desk. Well, as it started to go through more and more, it went from just a space for our desk to, well, this could actually be our new room. Well, we could put the Christmas tree up there and we should get a fireplace and we should now spend Christmas there and it's coming up with Christmas and all this stuff. So this is a very different feel than this. You need both because you need this to be able to show the subs what it is and all that kind of stuff. But this is what actually sells the emotion of the project. And this is a rendering. This is not a photo. This is an actual rendering. On our bathroom project that we did, we had the same designer. My wife, I still even have it in this office. My wife had this book of all the renderings that every single person that walked into the house, she said, oh, have you seen the renderings for our bathroom that's going in upstairs? Let me go show you. And she would go get that, it's on like massive architect paper. She would go and flip through it and people would love it. And because it had furniture in it, it was super realistic. It was super nice. Like that's what kept her motivated during a remodel because again, it's a very invasive process. You're in it, even on the weekend when you're not working, the homeowner, we're still living in a construction zone. It's tough. These renderings is what keeps people engaged during the process. All right. So now with these, you can take your concepts and actually like turn them into hyper-realistic renderings. If you can't physically do it yourself, they have softwares out there, they have companies out there that will do it. But I can tell you from firsthand experience, this is the stuff that gets us super excited. This is fine because we have to dream it up in our head, but this is like, oh my gosh, this is even better than we thought it was gonna be. So my suggestion is just like with your photos, get your designs dialed in because again, if this is important to your clients, you wanna leverage it online. Next piece is going to be your Google business profile reputation. You want good reviews, right? If you look at this, your company is in the middle, say you're 5 stars, 56 reviews, and then you get 4 competitors. One's 76 reviews at a 4.8, 4.9 at 130, 5.0 at 96, and 4.5 at 365. You could probably kick out the 365 at a 4.5 if all you saw was just reviews. I can tell you this is actually from a real client of ours, where that competitor that had 365 reviews at a 4.5, their stuff was just okay. It was a higher volume remodeling company. So me personally, I wouldn't have hired them anyway, but then looking at the reviews, that makes more sense. But these other 3, you may be thinking to yourself, if you're 56 reviews at 5 stars, you're thinking, well, that's great. Like I'm kicking butt. I got 56 reviews, 5 stars. Well, your top other competitors have 4.8 at 76. Maybe that's a little bit low. You can make that argument. But 4.9 at 130 and 5.0 at 96, like you're going to be pretty much in the same ballpark here. So like it's, again, you don't want to rest on your laurels on this stuff. Constantly getting reviews is going to be helpful because it's all building up that idea of the homeowner saying, I can envision you doing this project for me. So now you have your reviews. And the last thing is a website that ties it all together. All right, so a couple things here. One, in the remodeling space, this is high trust, high ticket. It's a longer research phase. People are not going to Google saying, kitchen remodeler near me, boom, I'm hiring you, let's go. I've had 250 grand to redo my first floor, you're it. It's a long process here, and I'll walk you through what that process looks like at the end, but keep that in mind. Your website is like the most important piece to keep people engaged and keep them educated. 2, prospects are going to spend as much time on your website as they need. All right, this is the IKEA showroom analogy I like to give. You walk into IKEA just for some pillows, and ultimately 2 miles later after this maze, you're walking out with a full bedroom set because people kept seeing more things that they wanted to see. That's the goal of the website. We want to guide them through learning about you, how you work, what you specialize in. We don't want them just to call you right now because now you're going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting. You're going to have to explain to them why you don't just replace a front door, all that stuff. The website should be a living and breathing resume for the business that continuously is updated to make sure that it's showing off the latest and greatest stuff to appeal to what your ideal client wants in the here and the now. And the last thing is, you want to make them a qualified lead before they call you as best as possible. So identifying what are the things that a great referral quality lead knows about you before they reach out, the website should be able to do the exact same thing. All right, so that's the goal of your website. And when we're thinking about what the actual bones of the website need to have on it, there's a bunch of stuff. You're going to have your typical homepage, about us page, contact page, project walkthrough pages, which I'm going to explain that briefly today. Service and location pages, you need a page for every service that you do in every location that you do it in. And I'll explain what that is in the SEO section, but you need a bunch of pages on it. Design process and experience pages. If you do design, you want a page that talks about how your design process works. If you have a good experience where you're using project management software, you're doing the weekly walkthroughs, you want a page that explains all that stuff as well. Educational blog content, and then USP specific pages. Basically what that looks like is if you are really good with design, or I'm sorry, not design, if you have like a showroom that clients absolutely love, perfect. Have a page dedicated to a showroom, right? Like the website needs to be basically the resume for your business, all right? So that's what I want to hammer home on the website side of things. I remember I was talking to a prospect a couple months ago, and they were like, I need more traffic to the website. And I was like, look, we could send more traffic to the website, but ultimately you're not going to get more leads because the website is not set up to convert based off of what you're telling me right now who your ideal client is, what you guys do, and then what your website's actually showing off. It's a complete mismatch. So just like if you were going to apply to a job, you would update your website, update your resume, make it very dialed in, make it very specific, make it formatted correctly to whatever job you're trying to apply for. The website is the exact same thing. Walking through, and we'll have a whole webinar on like website best practices and how to do it, but that's like a very in-depth topic in and of itself. But the website's not like a checkbox thing. You need to really like think through this stuff. Project walkthrough pages. So basically, a project walkthrough page is, think about your ideal client. You want to create a page that shows their project themselves, right? You want to have basically what you did for the project, how long it took, price points, locations. Basically, you want to be able to call out stuff that aligns with who they are. So if somebody comes in and they want to remodel their first floor and they have a budget of 50 grand, well, seeing that the budget's 425, they're probably not going to move forward. Or if they live in this case, Roswell, Georgia, and they go, oh, wow, I live in Roswell. This project was done in Roswell. Perfect. That creates like that neighborly effect. So we're trying to highlight some of the things that were done on the project as like an overview so people can quickly see, is this project relevant to me and my situation? If it's not, they can move on. But we want to be able to highlight some of that stuff. We also want to be able to highlight what are some of the final finishes that you did that are really, the clients loved it. Like if this is a growing family scenario, the spacious mudroom part makes total sense. Like I've got 2 kids, one is 3 months, one is almost 2. We don't really use a mudroom, but when they become 5 and 7, we're definitely going to want a mudroom. So this would be something that would appeal specifically to myself and my wife. On the flip side, if you're aging in place and you're 65, mudroom doesn't really matter to you. So that's where having an ideal client that you're actually catering to comes into play that much more. All right. So we have an overview, then we have some of the cool highlights that the client specifically loved. We then want to walk through the process. Excuse me. How'd you get there? If design's important, perfect, show design. All right, if that's what makes you unique and special, and that's one of the things that they absolutely want to see, you need to show this stuff off. I've talked to a lot of remodeling companies that do design. They love design. They're great at design. And nowhere on the website can I find anything about design with the exception of on their process page. It's very small. That just says step 3, we do design. If design's that important and that impactful and it really gets your prospects bought in, make sure that this is important. And on the specific projects, you want to highlight how you got there through design. And then lastly, this is where you actually want to then show off the gallery of the project itself. All right, so what we're doing is we're actually adding context to these photos. Because right now, if I just showed you these photos and that was it, you wouldn't know what I did, how long it took, what the befores look like. Was it small? Did I open up walls? Did I do anything else? What was the goal of this? Did you just repaint the cabinets and that's it? We want to add context to all of that stuff so people can feel like they're now in this prospect's shoes to go, oh, I'm also dealing with that. I also want that. So now it makes it much easier for the client to go, or the prospect to go, okay, now I see what you did. I see why you did it. I understand it. Maybe you're a good fit to do the project for us. So that is where feature project pages come in. The way that we started to create these was basically when I was watching my wife go through website stuff of these remodeling companies and just look at a bunch of random projects. There's no context. We didn't really know what was going on. I was like, well, I feel like there's a whole story behind this stuff that we should be telling. So we started building these out just to test to see how impactful are they. And these pages are now the number 2 most trafficked pages across the board on our client's website after the homepage, which makes sense because most people come in through the homepage. So do not sleep on these pages. Again, you need to know who your ideal client is, what specifically they like, and what the media looks like to be able to build these things out. But this is like, imagine when you sell, you probably roll up portfolio of this gallery and then you're explaining the client, the project, all that stuff to your prospect. These pages do the exact same thing, but now they do it online. And when we do this stuff correctly, where we have the right media, the right reputation, and a website that specifically is geared towards saying these are the unique things that we do, all of that stuff, then your ideal client is saying, I could definitely see you doing this project for us. And that is our goal. Now, once we have that dialed in, that's when we then get into perfect. Now that we know that they're saying, I could see you doing this for us, can they even find you when they're looking? Let's talk through some nerdy marketing stuff, and that is going to be market desire. I want you to take, this is a funnel, your entire market that you serve. Think about your typical ideal clients that are in that market. You're going to have 30% of that market is never going to buy from you no matter what. And that could be because they don't own a home. That could be because their spouse is a remodeler. And why would they ever hire you? That could be because they just hate the industry of remodeling because they watch Trading Spaces, back in the day, and it looks so bad they're not going to do it. So 30% you're never going to be able to work with just because. Then you go one step down and you've got the next 30%. And this can be 30% of people that are not looking for your services at all. However, they're open to it at some point in life. All right. I would say for me, I'm not actively looking for a Ford F-150. All right. Maybe at some point in life, I'll want to buy one, but I'm not adamantly opposed to it. I didn't wake up with like I'm not ever going to, get a Ford F-150. I'm not in that bucket, but maybe at some point, I'll be there. Then you get your next 30%, and that's going to be the next 30% of people that are, not actively looking, but not against it, right? They're just starting to think through this stuff. My kitchen's kind of small. What are some of the options? Oh, I saw somebody else's kitchen was cool. Maybe I should start thinking about doing my kitchen, but they're getting closer and closer. Then you've got 7% of the market, and that's going to be people that are not ready to buy yet, but they're doing their research. They're starting to figure out what it costs, how long it takes, what the best finishes are, things like that. And then you've got, at the very, very bottom, about 3% of the market, and that's going to be people that are pretty close to buying now, whether they're actively reaching out or they're starting to do some comparisons of different companies. That's really, how the whole market breaks down. 30% never going to work with. 30% maybe, maybe not. The next 30% is going to be they're open to it. The next 7% is they're starting to look. And the last 3% is going to be they're ready to rock. I want to focus on, from a can they find you when they're looking perspective, the 3, the 7, and the next 30% up. The 3%, the very bottom, those are people that are going to be going to Google and they are ready to hire. So they're looking of best companies, company comparisons, reviews and testimonials. They're typing in kitchen remodeler near me. Those are the people that are, they're not necessarily hiring now, because like typically when somebody types in remodeler near me, that doesn't mean that they're pulling the trigger right then and there. They're still doing a bunch of their research to figure out what's what. However, those are the people that are very close to buying probably the next few months, as long as something weird happens in their life. One step up, those are going to be the 7% of people in your market, and that's what we call buying intent informational searches. Basically, they're looking up what does it cost, how long does it take, what should I do on my end, how do I get a loan for this stuff, whatever it is. That's going to be your 7% of the market. Then one more thing up, that's where we're focusing on informational searches. That's people that are just simply looking up backsplash ideas or comparisons of countertops, things like that. The thing that's unique about all three of these types of people is they're actively searching for this stuff. It's different searches. Some people are looking to hire now. Some people are just looking up ideas. But either way, they're showing you that they have intent behind actually learning more about something specific as it pertains to your industry. This is the 40% of the market that Google and now AI really focuses on. Because what ends up happening is most people, they only focus on this very, very bottom part, which is the 3%. That's where Google Ads comes in. And basically what you're doing is you're just saying everybody who's about ready to buy right now, I want to get in front of, which is makes total sense. They've got their credit card a lot closer to being pulled out. But ultimately, we don't know how close they actually are. We don't know if they even trust us. We don't know what their buying perspectives are, any of that stuff. So we want to be able to focus on the 30, the 7, and the 3%. We want to hit all three. That's what SEO is really focused on. And what they're doing is when they go do a search on Google, they're going to look up, say they want to do their kitchen remodeling company Charlotte, or kitchen remodeling near me, or kitchen renovation company Dilworth, which is the neighborhood I live in, or kitchen remodeler Charlotte. And ultimately, to be able to get found, and that's all, just so you know, these are all in that 3% markets. We're going to talk about the other 7 and the 30 in a second. But just to get found in those, Google's smart, but it's not a genius. It may seem like a genius, but ultimately, Google is all about taking information and then figuring out what is what and spitting it back. This is a Charlotte market thing. If you want to do kitchens, bathrooms, basements, and home additions as your services, and you want to focus on Charlotte, the city, Lake Norman, which is north of here, Dilworth, which is like kind of a suburb of Charlotte, you actually want to have a page dedicated to each of these. So 1, 2, 3, 4 services, 1, 2, 3 locations. This means you should have 12 pages on your website, and each one's going to focus on the service in that specific location. And the reason for this, there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. The wrong way is to make it spammy and just basically mass produce these pages, and all you're doing is taking your kitchen remodeling page and popping the word Lake Norman out and putting Dilworth in. You want to actually contextualize the page to the service and the area. And the way to think about this is Lake Norman is a lake here in Charlotte. The people that buy homes on Lake Norman, they're much larger homes. They're probably 5,000 square feet. They're buying it because they want to entertain. They want their kids and their grandkids to come over. So when they want to remodel their kitchen, they want to have a kitchen that is really set up for entertainment purposes. They want it to be large. They probably want it to be able to walk out to a deck right next to them. Maybe they have 2 different sinks. Basically, they have a very different reason for remodeling their kitchen versus in Dilworth, my home is 1,900 square feet. I've got 2 young kids. I'm not looking to have a massive, expansive kitchen. What I'm looking for is a more functional kitchen that can be built within the footprint of a 1946 house. So they're 2, same service, 2 locations, but 2 very different reasons for remodeling the kitchen. Each of these pages that you have should be able to speak to that market and why they're getting that thing done. Let's flip back over to basements. Lake Norman, a lot of the basements there, because it's good digging up there, you can have a basement. In Dilworth, I'm like one of 3 people that I know that actually has a basement in their home. My basement, just like the other 3 people that I know, we have like 6'8" high ceilings. You have to actually drill through the floor to then be able to build the basement out. They don't have that in Lake Norman. So the approaches and the reasons and the permitting and all that stuff is different in Lake Norman versus Dilworth. And if I'm in Lake Norman and I see a page that says, this is how we remodeled bathrooms in Dilworth, or basements, excuse me, that's not relevant to me. I'm moving on to the next piece. And vice versa if I'm in Dilworth and I see one for Lake Norman. So that's where having a specific page for each of these comes in. It needs to be contextualized to the service in that area. So if somebody feels like, oh, they actually understand why me in Lake Norman are why I'm redoing my kitchen. It's because I want to entertain. They're talking about this. They're showing examples of how they've helped other people in my specific scenario get ready for Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners by redoing their kitchen. Same idea. So you want all of these because if you just have a page that's focused on Charlotte, that's fine. But if you have a competitor that also has a page that's focused on Lake Norman and you have somebody who's in Lake Norman that's searching for a kitchen remodeler near me, your competitor is most likely going to win because they have a more relevant response to what somebody is searching for. All right. Yes, there's a wrong way to do it, which is to spam this. I see this a lot. Somebody's going to create a page for every single zip code. That's too much. There's a nuance to this. You got to get it right. You got to make it look clean, but ultimately you want to make this stuff very specific to each individual person, depending on where they are and what service that they actually want. Now, that's great. You have a page for each thing, but how does Google actually know that you have some authority to actually be able to redo basements up in Lake Norman versus Dilworth? Well, this is where blog, content, and project walkthrough pages come in. Basically, Google wants to see that you're an authority in the space, and a great way to do that, which also aligns with people that are in that 7% search and that 30% search, you want to have blog content that's actually talking about things that are ancillary or supporting to the service that you're providing. So if we're talking about just a general kitchen remodeling in Charlotte, we would have a blog that talks about what's it cost to remodel your kitchen in Charlotte, or top 5 features that families love, or the kitchen remodeling process, or we're showing off a featured project page that actually says, here's us transforming a kitchen in Charlotte into a family-friendly first floor, or remodeling mistakes to avoid. And basically what you're doing is you're talking about specific things that, like a lot of the FAQs that prospects have that are also searching into Google to be the one that answers their question. If you ever read Endless Customers, or They Ask You Answer by Marcus Sheridan, it's a very similar approach. This is, instead of just answering what people are asking you, you're figuring out what they're asking Google to do it. But basically, you want to be able to answer these questions in a way that is helpful to people, because ultimately, the more that you can highlight what you know, the more that Google is going to see that you're an authority, the easier it is for them to go, wow, this company says they do kitchen remodeling in Charlotte, which is the orange circle. They also have a bunch of blogs that highlight that they know what they're talking about. Let me go ahead and boost them up a little bit more, so when somebody is searching for kitchen remodeling in Charlotte, that page is a little bit higher because I see they actually know what the heck they're talking about. And you want to do this for all those locations and all those services that you have. So again, there's a right way and a wrong way to do this, but if you were talking about kitchen remodeling cost in Charlotte, that's going to be different than kitchen remodeling cost in Lake Norman and kitchen remodeling cost in Dilworth, because it's different setups, different locations, different finishes, different this, different that. So you actually want to have content that now makes your website an authority, because you have all the different services with all the supporting blog content, with featured project pages that align with the actual services themselves to show people and Google that you actually have done that service in that area. That's where the featured project pages will come in when it comes into the authority play, because let's say in this case, we're trying to get found for kitchen remodeling in Charlotte. A lot of these are blogs, but this one down here, the bottom right one, where it says FPP, we're actually showing proof that we have done a kitchen project in Charlotte that signals to people and Google, like, they're not just full of it, they're actually doing the service itself. There must be some validity to this company. All right, so we want to make sure that we're hitting on all those facets there to really build up that authority, and that will actually drive traffic to the website. And then again, just like with a normal coming in through the homepage, we want to get people over to those project pages, because ultimately if they come in because they found your kitchen remodeling Charlotte page, they still want to see your projects, right? So let's make it easy on the website to be able to guide them through step by step over to those projects to really understand, can you actually solve their specific problem? So that's basically in a nutshell how SEO works. Kevin, I see you got your hand up. I'll get you in a second. We want to make sure that we're hitting on the right stuff to get people into the door for the right terms, and then get them on the website to the specific pages that we want them to see to make sure that they go, wow, this is a pretty good company for me. On that same facet, same vein, how AI search works. If you want to nerd out over this stuff, we just did a webinar on this so you can learn more. Super high level overview. Basically, AI is doing a lot of that search functionality for you. So now, when you're typing in kitchen remodeling company in Charlotte, and you type this into ChatGPT or Gemini or any of those other LLMs, it's actually doing a bunch of searches for you. So it's actually going to be doing behind the scenes, it's going to do a bunch of research on top remodeling contractors in Charlotte, or luxury design build kitchen remodel firms, or kitchen remodeler with high client satisfaction, or award-winning remodelers near South Charlotte, or whatever it is. They're doing all this behind the scenes. They're then scanning the internet. They're looking at the Google rankings. They're then validating, is this a good company or not? And they're figuring out all this information So now think about how you're, in our world, we're talking about, you're looking at the Google Business Profile reviews, you're seeing if they're credible, all that kind of stuff. These AI search functions are now doing its best to do that heavy lifting for the homeowner themselves. It's then taking all these responses to all these different search terms, putting it together, and then coming back and saying, hey, this is a company that we think that you should look at. That's basically, in a nutshell, how that stuff works. So instead of the homeowner doing all that research, it's now the AI search tools that are doing it for the prospect. And it's going to get to the point where, yes, we're typing in kitchen remodeling company Charlotte, and it's coming up with very basic search terms. But the more that the AI search knows about you specifically, they're then going to look up, they're going to know about Logan and Audrey, and they're going to say, oh, all right, best Charlotte remodelers who design warm, natural kitchens with plenty of storage and kid-safe layouts, because they know our design styles that from the stuff that we look up and the stuff that we talk to it about. We like warm, we like natural, we have 2 kids. Now it's looking up that stuff as well. This is why knowing your ideal client and your unique selling proposition, so the problems, how you solve it, and then having a website that aligns with all the stuff through the website itself, the blog content, the service pages, the USP pages. This is the direction that all the stuff is going. The more personalized that you can make your website feel to your ideal client and make it easy for the AI tools to be able to find that and go, hey, I just found Aaron's remodeling company. They specialize in this, this, and this. They also, they do a lot of projects for growing families. Their natural style is really more in like natural feel kitchens, and they're really big on storage. They're going to see that on Aaron's Remodeling's website, and then when I finish my search, they're going to show this is who we suggest. These are the pages on the website you should go check out. So basically, that is where just having a very generalist approach to your online marketing and your website is going to fail. So you need to get specific. This stuff works, by the way, very well for SEO right now. SEO is still the king when all this stuff comes, but AI, it's going to be a few years down the road before it's like takes over more. But SEO, we still have years of runway left as a whole. So don't look at this as like, oh, I'm saying SEO's out. SEO builds into the AI stuff, so you need both. And the last piece here, inside out. Now that we know who the client is, what the problem that we solve is specifically, how can they actually envision us helping them specifically, and they're able to find us when they're looking, because they're looking. Now we want to look at, do they even know who we are before they start looking? And that is back to this funnel. Again, that top 30%, we're never gonna go after. But when it now comes to social media, billboards, truck wraps, all that stuff, we're now focusing more on that 30% that's kind of like in that cream color, where they're open to it at some point in life. They're the people that are like me with a Ford F-150. I'm not against it. I've seen a million Ford F-150 commercials. I know about it. I know what it's all, like that kind of stuff. So when it comes time to like figure out what kind of truck should I get, I'm not going to Google typing in like, what is a truck near me? Like, I know I'm going to start probably looking up Ford F-150s as an option. That's the same idea here. So when you think about those, and this is called like top of the funnel, when you think about those different avenues, those are more of like TV commercials, radio, billboards, newspaper ads. Basically, it's not people that are actively searching for it, which is where that bottom 30, the 7 and the 3% comes in. It's now people that you kind of know what demographic they are, you know where they live, and now you're basically casting a really wide net saying, hey, I think you're an ideal client of ours because you live in this area, we put in these specifications. I have no idea if you're interested in a kitchen or not, but I'm going to go ahead and show you the ad with the hopes that at some point you will be. That is where this stuff comes in. And the billboards, the social media, the boosting of the posts, all that stuff, none of it is inherently wrong. It's that most people just do it out of order. They don't know their ideal client. They don't know what makes them special. Their website looks like crap. They don't have great reviews. So ultimately, somebody's going to see your billboard. And then what are they going to do? They're going to go to Google and type in Aaron's Remodeling Charlotte, and it's going to pull up with a bad website, bad photos, bad reviews. So there was no need to even spend money on a billboard in and of itself. So I'm not saying don't do the other things. You can 100% do them, and you should do them, but you should do them in a very specific order. And that's very last. Now, the way, going back to that great media, great stories, ideal client, all that stuff, the way that social media, what we want to do is we don't want to just spray and pray. So when it comes to social media, let's take that project that we had before. That was the kitchen. I showed you the featured project page. And we want to be able to promote this to people because we're super proud of the project. We know that it did really well. Clients love it. Let's go ahead and show this. What most remodeling companies are going to do is they're going to post about it on social, and then they're going to boost this post to all of Charlotte. And this, I can't zoom in on the screen, but it says, for this Dilworth renovation, we XYZ. Now, in this circle, which is your geographical area that you can boost this stuff on, you've got Dilworth, you've got Eastover, you've got Plaza Midwood, you've got Villa Heights, you've got Oakhurst, Cotswold, Myers Park. You have all these areas. But ultimately, what's going to happen is Fate Meta is going to put this out to everybody, and basically you're going to spread your budget pretty thin. What we want to do instead is we want to push this just to Dilworth. So we want to maximize the dollars because this says furthest Dilworth renovation at the very top. Now, somebody in Villa Heights or Plaza Midwood or these other areas that are still pretty nice in Charlotte, they may see this and go, that's a cool looking kitchen. Let me check it out. But if you're in Dilworth and the first thing says furthest Dilworth renovation, you're going to want to stop and actually look at what is going on. It's kind of like if you look on the news and there's a fire in a house, if you see that this fire is on the other side of the country, you're probably not going to look. But if you see that this fire is happening in your neighborhood, you're definitely going to stop and watch the news. People want to feel like it's the local side of it. So when it comes to social media promotion, do it very specific. All right. And what you want to do on this one is instead of just saying, hey, we just did this project in Dilworth, if you want this, click this link, call us now, buy our stuff. Again, we're not going to people that are like actively seeking out a kitchen remodeling company. What we're doing here is we're basically just saying, we do kitchens in Dilworth. We did a really cool renovation. We want to invite you to check it out. We have a page on our website, which is that featured project page that we want to send you over to. And the goal is not necessarily to get them to buy right now, but it is to hit on that middle 30% where at some point they're going to buy. Maybe, maybe not. But ultimately, we know that they live in Dilworth. We're calling out Dilworth, and we're inviting them to check out a project that we have done. And that is the ultimate goal, because if your work speaks for itself, we want to add context to it, and we want to make sure that we are now getting it in front of the right people at the right place in the right time. And the idea here is that you have individual projects in these different areas that you are now just promoting. All right, and that's if you want to do one, and you just did a project in Elizabeth, you want to promote it. You wouldn't to do one in Plaza, you promote it. Freedom Park, you promote it. So basically, you now have, and these orange circles, in this case, these are all social media ads. You can also do this with billboards. You could also do this with the phone books if you really wanted to go down that pathway. But basically, what you're doing is you're just saying, I know I want to be in this neighborhood. It was nice that we actually did a project in Dilworth that we would love to do more of, and we know we can do more of this stuff for people. Let's go ahead and make this almost like a mini interactive billboard, because with a billboard, you drive by it and you see it and that's fine. But in this case, you get to actively swap stuff in and out. People can interact with the post itself. They can share it with people. They can then go back to the page itself that you built it on. So that's what we want social media to be able to do for us, is to basically enhance the projects. That's the goal here, because ultimately what we want to be able to do is we want to hit the timeline for how people buy from us in the exact right order. So conceptually, piecing it all together, the way that it's going to work, and again, it's all shifting and it's not exactly this way, but month 0, homeowner sees your Instagram ad about a kitchen project in their neighborhood, which is your top of the funnel that we just talked about. They click through your feature project page, which they're going to see the media and the website, and they then spend a couple more minutes on the website just exploring about, how you work, what you do, stuff like that, just understanding more about who you are. That's it. That's all they did. Now, 4 months later, because this is a long sales cycle, they now go to Google and they type in kitchen remodeling costs Charlotte. So they're now doing SEO. They find your blog post with some cost breakdowns, and they remember your company because they're like, oh, I remember a few months back, I saw their ad about a project they did in my area. That's pretty cool. And then what are they doing? They're on your website and they're checking out some other projects that you've done just to see the associated costs with them, because you have other feature project pages as well. Month 8, they Google kitchen remodeling company near me, and they see that your company pops up at the top. Again, this is your SEO. They recognize the name and they click immediately because they already have brand recognition. They've seen some of your projects. They've seen stuff cost. Like, they're way more bought into you than anybody else. And they're going to spend a bunch of time on your website exploring all the things that they need to explore, whether that's your process, your pricing, how you operate, what your experience looks like, what your design process looks like. Maybe they want to look at 30 of your project walkthrough pages, but basically they're going to be able to use your website as an interactive resume to really suss out how legit are you. And lastly, month 10, now they come back, they fill out a contact form, and they're pretty qualified, right? Because they know how you work, they've been through your website, all that stuff, but this didn't happen immediately. If you notice at the beginning, they saw the ad, they clicked through some stuff, they then came back a few months later, they then came back a few months later, they then came back a few months later, and that's ultimately how this funnel kind of goes. That is where we want to do this in the right order, because now what I'm saying at the top is all this stuff builds. Yes, at the beginning, they did see that Instagram ad, but ultimately that works well. But during this whole thing, there were still people that are Googling kitchen remodeling company near me that didn't see your ad that are still able to move forward. So we want to go in the correct order, but this is how all this stuff now plays together. All right. We need to identify who our ideal client is and what we do that's special and create that T-chart. The media has to be dialed in. The website has to now take those first three things and make it so specific to your ideal client that when they get on your website, they go, wow, this is who I want. Great photos. I see it. I get it. I understand more about it. I feel like they could help me with my project. Now that we have that dialed in, let's get people to be able to see it. SEO, AI search. If you notice, I don't have Google Ads here. Google Ads can work. I'm not a big fan of them, just mostly because it takes a lot, costs a lot of money to get Google Ads, enough. It's like enough ad revenue that you need to get in the door. I'd rather put that back into your own brand. And then that way you're building up your own brand, not just padding Google's pockets. And then the last piece is going to be the video and the meta video ads. Billboards could work, sponsorships could work, all of that stuff. But ultimately, the control being back within, you get to use social media to show off your project, get it back to your website, update what you want to say. It's an easy way to create like micro geographical targeted areas, way more than putting up a billboard and letting it sit for 6 months. So here's what you want to do walking away from all this. All right. Now, all the stuff I'm about to walk through, these are all things that if you want us to do them for you, at the end, you can schedule a call with us. We'll show you how all this stuff works. But basically, you want to audit your ideal client, right? You want to pick your favorite past customer, document what they valued most, identify patterns across your top 5 clients, and then write out your actual ideal client avatar profile, right? So pick a specific person, figure out what they liked, identify patterns across your top people, and then write out who your actual ideal client is. Same thing for the unique selling proposition. You want to list out those specific deliverables in your process, identify what specifically that they praised, take any vague claims like, oh, they communicated well, make them concrete, all right? And then update service descriptions with proof points, meaning if you have descriptions internally that talk about what you do for kitchens and how you do it and what you offer, make sure those are updated with actual proof. Audit the media. This is now look at all your project photos. Are they interior design or are they real estate quality, right? Now identify 3 to 5 different projects that need professional photography done because it's, you may be saying, oh, I want to do more whole homes for younger growing families, but all your professional photos are all about powder rooms for aging in place. It's a mismatch, right? You need to then identify what projects do you actually need to do, get a photographer out there to stage it and shoot it. Show them this webinar if you want. We also have documentation on it. But basically, make sure they're doing the right stuff to get the mood across. And then consider updating your renders to more hyper-realistic for design side. I can tell you from firsthand experience, it makes a world of difference. Next, we're going to audit the website. What we want to be able to do is actually have, first, do we have feature project pages that give context to projects, not just galleries? Do we have separate service pages in each location? Does our design/process page prove our unique selling propositions? And is our content contextualized to the ideal client, right? Just like you are, when you're applying to a job, you want to make sure that if you're applying to a marketing agency role, your work experience doesn't just show all the different kitchens that you've worked at. I don't care about that personally. What I care about is what have you done in the marketing space that's specific to me, all right? And then lastly, auditing your visibility, right? Can your ideal client avatar find you in Google, all right? Ask Gemini, which is like Google's AI version of ChatGPT. What do they know about your company, right? Have a whole conversation with it. Like, figure out what it actually knows about you. Look at your meta ads. If you're running meta ads, are they geo-targeted, or are you just spraying and praying and boosting a post and that's it? And then are they focused on the right outcome, right? Some people, you can run meta ads or Facebook ads that are all about generating leads. But unless you're doing it in the right order, where you're warming a whole audience up and then coming back in later and then asking for the sale, you're going to get a bunch of bottom feeders. So there's a right way to do it. That's why with what we talked about today, especially in a very expensive, high touch, high everything space like remodeling is, my suggestion, focus on the top of the funnel, really just get brand visibility into your projects, not into you, not like, hey, I'm Logan, I own Logan's Remodeling, what's up? Show your projects. That's what people are going to build rapport with first and foremost. And when you get all this stuff dialed in, what ends up happening is your ideal clients will then say, hey, I could definitely see you doing this project for us. That is what we want. All right? That's the whole goal of all this. So if we get that dialed in and you can start to work through this stuff for 2026, you will be so much happier with what you're seeing, because you'll actually understand why you're doing what you're doing, and you're not just spraying and praying with tactics. If you want to schedule a 20-minute call with us, I'll do some Q&A right now, but if you want to schedule a 20-minute call, we'll walk through this stuff specifically with you, talk about what your gaps are, how you're doing, help you identify an ideal client. You can schedule a call there, and email probably went out as well. That will allow you to schedule there, chat with Ashley about this stuff. But basically, this is like, at the beginning I said, oh yeah, we have clients that say they go so much deeper than marketing. This is the stuff that we just talked about that, like, I've never heard another marketing company like jump in and talk through this stuff. It's very time intensive, but ultimately it gives you a very clear path on what you should be doing and who you should be serving. So if you want help doing this stuff, we got you covered. So without further ado, I'll open it up to questions, whatever you guys got. Let me know. Let me see if I can figure out how to open up this Q&A thing. All right. Q&A. Okay, perfect. All right. Question was, we have 2 showrooms in 2 different areas of the DC area. How do we navigate that in terms of our GBP? I don't want to overwhelm our prospects, but both showrooms do hit different parts of DC, Maryland, and Virginia at different areas, because some showrooms are closer than others, but we do want to be consistent throughout our Google search. So people do think that we're limited. I like the idea of adding a showroom page. So the GBP one, if you have 2 locations, you should have 2 different Google business profiles for each of those showrooms. All right. It's pretty straightforward to get them to one or the other. I would definitely add a showroom page on your navigation. Like, make the showroom look good. I'll see if I can. Here, this is what we did for Rainy Blair. They have a really nice showroom. We did a whole walkthrough. I would check that out as well. But like, the showroom is nice. Like, they captured it in a beautiful way. So if you have a good showroom, show that stuff off, right? But do 2 GBPs for each of the showrooms. That actually helps you out because it makes it a little bit easier for people to find you when they're searching on Google, when it's around the showroom itself. That's the big thing that people, I still think, is a little bit mystified around, is that when it comes to Google, your Google business profile works really well when it's like a very tight proximity of where you're searching. But once you start to venture out past, like, a couple mile radius, the Google business profile rankings drop, and now your normal SEO has to kick in. So I would have one for each. All right, what other questions do we got? Do you recommend doing social media marketing on personal profiles or business pages? Great question. The answer is both. So basically, there's a stark difference. I see this a lot, and I don't have data to back it up or not, but a lot of people treat their business profile as a personal profile. And what I mean by that is they will go to a conference, job trade conference, whatever it is, and they post on their business page, hey, we just went to this conference and leveled up our company. We're so happy. Homeowners don't care about that stuff. All right, they don't. So what I would suggest is that's a great personal brand play, but ultimately for the business, you want to show off the business stuff that your prospects care about. What they really care about is, if I go back to this, it's going to be way, way, way back, but it's all the problems that they had. They care about, if I can get back to the ideal client, I should just go in the beginning. They care about this stuff. Their cramped, disconnected kitchen. They care about frustration with unclear budget. That's what they care about. So like that's the stuff. So your personal is still very, very strong. B2B is different. So if you're Facebook friends with me, like most of my Facebook friends are going to be remodeling companies. So what I post, because I'm talking from one business owner to another, it's a different vibe versus like if you post, you're talking to my wife, right? My wife's not going to be like, oh my gosh, they went to JobTread Connect. That's so cool. Like I'm definitely going to hire them. It doesn't really matter as much. So you can do both, but I would definitely, from your business page, make it more focused on the business and the people behind the business, and on your personal, that's where you can talk about like more personalized stuff. But I would still, the business is the business. I would still post on your business page rather than your personal. Renee says, do you have relevant experience working with a closet company? If so, I don't think we've ever worked with like just a closet specific company. Renee, it's honestly probably very similar. The biggest difference is you could probably focus more if it's like a closet overhaul. It's a smaller project. It's less invasive. It might take a few days versus like a few months. So I feel like you could actually put in some like Google ads and some like local service ads that would make it a little bit easier for, people can find you faster. It's just that with those services, if you're trying to sell a $500,000 home edition or whole home remodel, it's going to be a little bit tougher to take it from a Google ad to convert right then and there. While with a closet, it's going to be a lower price point. Next question is, so many companies that were once construction companies are now design build, and they all say the same thing: craftsmanship, your vision comes to life on one roof. How do we find a USP that is not the design build process? I like your mention of renderings and walkthroughs. How can you talk about USP like brand pillars, and are they different? Often people say craftsmanship as their USP, and it feels so cliche. That's totally true. Let's talk about company values, right? If I tell you my company values, it means more to you because you're another business owner and you understand it. But if you tell me your company values, you tell my wife your company values, she does not care. All right? What she cares about is, can you help her specifically in her home? So when we talk about the idea of the USP being craftsmanship or your vision comes to life, a lot of times it's not necessarily unique. All right. A lot of times everybody has very vague statements. So when they say craftsmanship, if you actually have a higher level craftsmanship than others, right? You have like a level 4 drywall person, like you would want to highlight that, right? Or like if you're NKBA certified design, now that actually makes you a little bit different, a little bit special, a little bit unique. Homeowner may not know what that is, but a lot of this stuff that actually makes you special and different, you want to actually show proof that you actually do those things versus what everybody else does, which they just use those vague plateaus, which is all under one roof, in-house, veteran owned, 40 years in business. Like that stuff doesn't really matter as much. Homeowners can kind of see through that crap. What we want to see is great. If you really have higher level craftsmanship, make sure your photos zoom in and actually show me what really nice cabinetry looks like. Things like that. So that's where like those USPs and like the tangible things come into play. But basically, you can say it if you have concrete ways of updating and saying this is actually how we do it. That's perfect. But ultimately, the work itself needs to speak for itself. Great question though, because that is very common. Cool. Hopefully this was helpful. It's a lot of stuff. And all the stuff, just the last thing I'll say on this is, when you think about your ideal client and your USP, basically what will happen, this happens with everybody, even with us at CGM, is you're going to start off by going, all right, this is who it is. And then as time goes on, you do cool projects, you get better and better. You will get leveled up with better and better in clients because you're basically taking somebody who is, let's say, person's right here. You represent yourself as 10% better with good photos, good USP, all that stuff. Then the next time that you get another client that comes in the door, they're 10% better, and then 10% better. So basically, it is this flywheel effect where you're getting more and more dialed in to your ideal client, because then once you get to the next level of clientele, your systems then have to update. And with those updating of systems, maybe you look at design a little bit differently, and you go from drawings to actually like hyper-realistic renderings. Well, once you then infuse that back into your marketing, that's then going to get the next level of clientele. So basically, it is this constant shift of, just like your resume, you get better, you then update your resume, you then apply for a job, get a job, have way better experience. Then the next time that you apply, you're able to go to bigger and better companies. That is the idea here. So you're constantly like, if you feel like you don't have your ICA dialed in, or your projects or your photos, that's fine. Everybody's got to start somewhere. This is probably like the most frustrating part if you don't have it dialed in, because you got to start somewhere, and you may be thinking, well, I've always done this way, now I want to do it that way. Stack your stuff up. So if you've only ever done powder rooms and now you want to go to new custom homes, it's a lot harder to go from a powder room to new custom homes, because prospects want to see, have you ever built a new custom home before, right? Maybe you go powder rooms to bathrooms to first floor renovations to larger ADUs to custom homes, and that's your stacking right there. So the stuff's tough. This is all the stuff that we do here at CGN, that we work through all the stuff with you to make sure that when we show off your brand online and get people to it, they know, okay, this is exactly who they serve, how they help. So ultimately they can really determine, are you the right fit for them? So that's everything. If you have any questions, please let us know. We'll be back next month. We're doing one that's a very, very deep dive all about the featured project page, walking you through what's right, what's wrong, all of that stuff. So that one section that I went through today, that'll be next time. But otherwise, if you want us to help you with all the stuff, please let us know. Happy to help. We can nerd out over this stuff. So I will see you guys. Thank you very much. See ya.